1, 2, 3, clap.
All right.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Entrepreneur Life Podcast, your go-to podcast for all things entrepreneurship, accounting, and lifestyle. I'm your host, Katey Maddux, founder, speaker, author, serial entrepreneur, and avid traveler. And today I have with me Andrew Loranger. He's a top mortgage broker here in Miami. He's already done $1 billion in closed sales. That blows my mind, honestly, with over 3,000 customers. And he has built his success at the intersection of strategy and faith. I just love that. And he has no plans on stopping here. Welcome, Andrew.
Yeah,
I'm so excited you're here.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
It's weird calling you Andrew because
I know everyone calls me
called
Drew.
you Drew. Yeah.
In business, I go by Andrew. In personal life, I go by Drew.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean,
Tell
I'm
us,
super glad to be here.
What do you do?
Yeah. Well,
Where
first of
you
all,
from?
thank you so much for having me on. Yeah, I'm super excited. The setup is great. I love what you've done so far.
Thanks.
I love the color scheme. Yeah, this is awesome. So kudos to you,
you.
for having a dream, having a vision, and going after it, because I think that that's really what entrepreneurship is all about.
Yeah.
There's like so many roadblocks that come along the way, no matter what field you're in. And it's
Understatement of the year.
it's really all about like busting through those roadblocks and just staying like really on the vision. Distractions, roadblocks, setbacks.
And you've had a ton of those
Yeah.
this week alone, I think.
This week
Do
was
you want to
rough.
like shed some light? Because when you were telling me, I'm just like, this is insane. Like these are the stories that you hear about, but you
Yeah.
don't think like whatever happened to you.
I know. Well, it's interesting because like I was on the phone actually with my parents earlier yesterday, and I was like, it's crazy. When I was a kid, I used to have like $100 problems, like $50 problems. Yeah. I got into college, they turned into $1,000 problems. I had student loans and things. I was like, got in the real world, it started being like $5,000-$10,000 problems, and now I've got 6-figure problems that come out of nowhere, and you have to be prepared for these.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because I told my parents, I was like, I'm not like talking, I need to vent about this, but I'm not doing it from a place of complaining. Obviously it sucks.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I'm not going to complain about a 6-figure problem when I'm looking to have 7-figure problems. Yeah. The reason I have 6-figure problems is because I have 7-figure solutions, right? Now I'm going to have 7-figure problems when I have much bigger solutions. So I think it just comes with the territory. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I think that we're blessed to be in the position where as these issues come, we have provision to be able to take care of them.
Absolutely.
And so that's really where I am. This was a crazy week. I was telling you
another understatement of the year.
No, so I was telling you last night, yeah, I mean, I sometimes like commission checks could be small, couple grand. Sometimes they could be big. They could be 20, 30, 40 grand. Mm-hmm. And so I got a call. Well, I got actually a letter in the mail. And so I get a call from the owner of the company. And he's like, hey, by the way, one of your clients that we did 2 huge deals for, he defaulted on his debt. This has never happened to me.
I don't even know what that means.
So essentially the guy didn't pay his mortgage.
Okay.
I've been doing this for 7 years. This has never happened. And so this guy didn't pay his mortgage within the first 6 months. He defaulted. Now I got to pay back my commission because it's part of the broker contract. So we get hit with like a $40,000 bill. And I'm like, you're telling me I got to pay this back? And I was like, when does it due? He was like, it was due last week.
Yesterday.
And he was like, we got this letter like, a week ago, it was due last week. And I'm like, well, thanks for telling me. Like, this is crazy.
Wow.
So yeah, that was the first hit. And then the second hit, I ended up firing my accountant yesterday because I realized that the guy didn't file my taxes properly. He didn't request the extensions on time. He didn't do like anything that he was supposed to do. And now I have a 6-figure deficit to the IRS. So I'm like, yeah, like 120 grand plus the 40,000. So this is like $160,000 smack in the face this week. And I'm like, dude, this is crazy. Like, how does that happen? But it's interesting because, I'm blessed. The reason I have that liability is because I made a lot of money. Right. And this is after all the write-offs and everything. I still have this. So I'm like, I'm blessed. Rather than complaining about it, why don't I be grateful for the fact that I was able to make the money that has caused this issue?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think, it's our job, especially as entrepreneurs, to really take responsibility for everything that happens to us, because the reason that happened is really my fault. Although this guy messed up, I made the decision to hire him. Although something in my gut was like, this guy, don't hire him. I still, I didn't listen to that instinct. I still hired him anyways, because he was like promised me the world. He's going to save me a ton of money, yada, yada.
Yeah.
And then secondly, I also made the decision to be in this industry and make the amount of money that I'm making.
Right.
And now, it's also my responsibility now to handle this debt. So like I think like too often people are so easy to blame shift and it's always somebody else's fault. But like we're responsible for the good things and the bad things that happen in our life. And we got to take responsibility for that.
I think that's so key because so many entrepreneurs come into this and they're like, it's going to be successful and I'm going to make money. And it's like, you're the boss and you're the boss, right?
Exactly.
Like you take on the good and you take on the bad. And one of my closest friends, actually, he's a CPA accountant. And he hired somebody who then tried to steal all of his clients.
That's crazy.
They'd even signed an NDA. They'd signed a non-compete. Like, you know what I mean? Like, even with the paperwork, it's still so hard to find, one, people that you trust. But two, you fail forward. You live and you learn, But it's so important that you do take responsibility because playing the blame game is not going to make you successful.
Yeah. And then you can't just sit there and dwell on it. Like, yesterday, I got the news for the commission on Monday. I got the news for the issue with the CPA yesterday, or really some of it was on Tuesday. It really got solidified Wednesday. And the first thing I did was I got to fire this guy. I got to find a new CPA. I got to get this rectified. I have to pay the balance and I've got to just move forward. Right. But that's all stuff that you can't just sit on. Right. If I sit on that for another 3 to 6 months while I'm like figuring it out, like everybody, you talk to people sometimes and you're like, oh, how's this going? I'm figuring it out. Or I'm working on it. Right. That's bullshit. You should just go ahead and do it right away. Take care of it. Just like how you said you had this vision for this podcast and you woke up and you started working on it immediately. Because when you overthink, you get analysis paralysis
and nothing
happens. And I've experienced that so often. I experienced that with my own podcast where I just sat on it for so long. I was thinking about it, working on it, and nothing ended up happening, right? For so long. And so sometimes it just takes a wake-up call. And that's, for me, it's always been faith-driven because sometimes I rely on my own power, my own strength. I rely on my own money. I've got deals coming in. And then I start, straying away from like reading and scripture, meditation, and, kind of having that relationship. And then little things like this, I mean, it's not a little thing, obviously, but it's something that I know I can handle and manage, but God will like smack me all of a sudden and be like, hey, did you forget? Like, don't forget where this came from.
I think it's, as entrepreneurs, we get so caught up in like I call it like Katey Jireh, like Jehovah Jireh means God who provides, right? And so much we think that it's like Katey who provides or Drew who provides. Like I work, I make money, I provide. I hustle, I provide. And it's like, you're in the wrong order. You work, God provides. Like you have to keep that in check because the minute that you start thinking you're the one who provides, he'll smack you on the butt and be like, did you forget exactly what you said? Like
it's true.
You have to remember the order. You work, he provides. If you think you provide, something's going to remind you that you don't.
I know. No, it's true. It's true. And I mean, there's so many other facets in life where that takes place. It could happen in relationships. It could happen in, business relationships, obviously personal relationships. We sometimes like put the cart before the horse. And we're like, we're giving all this attention to the cart and we're not realizing that it's the horse that's pulling us and the horse that's providing that power. So yeah, I mean, that's just a testament of like a couple of things. I think number one, like keeping your eye on the prize is important, like always staying focused because this is a distraction.
Absolutely.
It's not a coincidence. Today, I get the keys to my new studio space where I'm going to be filming my podcast, a vision that I feel God gave me, right? I dedicated all this time and energy this week into this thing. And this, like, what are the odds that this week is also like the biggest financial smack in the face I've received in the last 4 years, right? So it's like that, those things are not coincidences. And I think sometimes they're meant to distract us because I think God wants to test, like, can I trust you with this vision?
Yeah.
Like, are you going to push through?
I think it's both and. Like, I think we have to kind of go back to God and be like, is this you? Because sometimes it is God testing us. Can I trust you?
Yeah.
And other times, like what Chris Valentin always says is the dogs of doom knock at the door of destiny. And so it's like, before you open that door, like God gave you a God dream. I think it's so crazy that we both got our podcast ideas in dreams.
In a dream, yeah.
Like that's wild, And so, before we go to actually open the door to the destiny and open the door to the God dream, the dogs of doom are barking and they're blocking the door. And it's like, are you going to push through them Or are you going to stop and be scared by the dogs barking?
Yeah.
You know, and there's so many things that it's like, it could be the Lord or it could be Satan. You know, it could be either.
Or it even could be our own decisions that we made. Like a lot of these things happen to me now because of decisions that I made. Like for instance, that guy that didn't pay his mortgage, like there was something in my gut that was telling me like, just don't work with this guy. Right. And I didn't listen to that. So that's my responsibility that I have to take. The fact that I worked with someone that my intuition was telling me not to.
Yes.
And even though it was a clean deal, everything was legal, everything was by the books, it was all clean cut. The guy still ended up being a shyster. You know what I mean? And so that's just something where I'm like, wow, God, you talked to me. You told me like that wasn't it. And I still did anyways because I wanted that 40 grand.
Yeah.
Because 40 grand is like, you know, who's going to say no to that?
Right.
And especially if you're doing the right thing and you're helping someone. But if God was like telling me don't do this and I did it anyways, now I'm feeling the repercussions. So I don't think it's always God or the devil. A lot of it is just really the response to our own actions that we've taken in the past. And then we have to own up to those, take responsibility, not blame somebody else, and then take the action to rectify it and move forward.
Absolutely. I remember when I first, for the past couple of years, I've been dealing with an autoimmune.
Yeah.
And when I first got sick, people were like, oh my gosh, this is out of nowhere. And I was like, it's not really out of nowhere. I spent 2 years doing a lot of drugs. I drank very heavily for about 8 years.
Wow.
I didn't take care of my body. I basically walked away from the Lord, and I made all these terrible decisions and was also trying to like hustle with my company and got addicted to Adderall. And not that Adderall is addictive chemically. It's you get attracted to that feeling, right?
Oh,
but I
of
get
course.
so much done on Adderall.
Yeah.
So for the fact checkers,
Sure.
But like, I'm doing all these things and then my body stops functioning and I'm sick. And it's like, people are like, oh, the devil's trying to pull you down. Could be. It could also just be the repercussions of my own bad decisions.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, exactly what you said, like, I feel like the Lord is very like, I will help you and I'll help you get out. But I gave you free will and you have to live with the choices that you've made.
Well, I think that takes a huge amount of self-awareness, first of all, because there's so many people that aren't aware of that. Like they don't even have the slightest conception that their actions could have caused this result. And it's always somebody else's fault.
Yes.
And I think when you have that self-awareness, that's huge. So like definitely kudos to you.
Thank you.
But like to have that revelation of, there are choices in my life that I made. I'm not saying that they did cause this, but they definitely could have influenced it.
Oh, I'm sure they played into
it. Sure. So that's huge. That's awesome. But yeah, that's where I am right now. I've got a lot going on. The business is still booming, which is amazing and shocking considering that rates have risen so high in our industry. I have seen a lot of competitors go out of business, like a ton.
Wow.
And the fact that we're not only still in business, but we're still doing well, we're still profitable, even despite these hits, it's just a testament to like, if you really stay focused on the prize, you do the right thing, you stay connected to people and you focus on relationships, like you can weather any storm.
Right. Is there one thing that like you feel like now that you would be like, man, if somebody had told me this 5 years ago, I would not be in the position that I'm in, or I would be set, or not that you're not set.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But like something that you've learned recently that I feel like one of the reasons I started this podcast is because as entrepreneurs, we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
And it's like, we don't know to ask the questions because we didn't know we were supposed to ask the question and we didn't know what we didn't know. Is there something that now that like, you're like, I didn't know what I didn't know then?
No, for sure. Yeah. There's so many. The list could we could be here for a couple hours. But I think like from a business standpoint, well, let's first speak on like what I'm currently dealing with.
Yeah.
Cause I think every season you could be like, damn, I wish I knew this. Right.
Absolutely.
So the one that I'm going through currently is I wish that I had paid more attention to my bookkeeping and hired
I did not pay him to say that, you guys.
An actual person that knows what they're doing, has a reputable, history of good work.
Yeah.
Has been, sent to me by a good referral source, which I thought this one had, but yeah, I think just like really that's huge because now I'm in like, I got a situation on my hands that I have to, like, I could have handled this probably 6 months ago or 12 months ago and just gotten ahead of it.
Right.
And everything would have been fine. I would have had a whole year to pay $100,000. That could have happened.
Doable,
you know what I'm saying? But to be like, yo, this is due in 30 days, that's different. So I think like really hiring a CPA who knows what they're doing to actually handle your taxes and paying a bookkeeper. The reason why I didn't hire the bookkeeper that's fixing me now is because I didn't want to pay the guy $400 a month. So I hired some other person that was
which
only
is
charging,
also very low,
which is very cheap. But this is only for one business. He's $400 per business. So for this specific business, he was $400 a month. Which again, like you said, is very reasonable, very, very reasonable. So I hired some schmuck that was only charging $250, right? So I'm like,
where do you even find someone that only charges $250?
It was some person out of Kendall. Kendall. So yeah, that was the situation where I was like, oh, I'm going to save money. I'm penny pinching and I cost myself a ton. There's a saying that we use in the industry, which is like, people try to like save a penny and they cost themselves $100. And that's exactly what happened.
Yes.
So I think, spend the money where it needs to be spent. There's money that you could not spend towards marketing or not spend towards salaries that could go towards good bookkeeping, good CPAs, good, accounting measures. That's huge. That's money very well spent in the right direction. That's something I wish I had known. Two, I wish I would say one of the things I really wish I had known was, I think it actually goes even deeper than business. I want to take it back to like from a personal level is self-love, right? I think a lot of people that this has been my year of like uncovering what does self-love mean and what is that. And so, I think that it has a direct correlation to business because if you don't love yourself, right, you will accept anything from anybody. You'll get into bed with the wrong people. You get into relationships with people that could potentially be abusive or treating you unfairly. You'll stay in that relationship, although it's broken because you feel like you don't deserve any better, right? You'll get into business relationships with people who are going to end up screwing you over because you think that this is what you deserve subconsciously.
Yes.
You might know like, I don't deserve this shit. Why is this happening? But subconsciously you don't believe that.
I see this in my friends, honestly.
And so this happened to me. I was in a super toxic, like abusive relationship for a year and a half. I was working with, a couple people that I shouldn't have been working with in business that were also treating me unfairly. And I wasn't like asking for what I deserved or setting proper boundaries because subconsciously I didn't know at the time. But the reason why I was doing it is because I had no self-love.
Wow.
Right. And so the minute that I started doing the internal work, doing shadow work, focusing on like reparenting myself, my inner child, doing all of this work, like my business blew up. I was able to weather these storms without losing my mind. And it's just like my personal relationships have thrived.
Yes. I say yes and amen to all of that.
Yeah.
I think as somebody who like is in the depths of people's money, right? Like I do bookkeeping and accounting for businesses, but my bigger clients, I do their personal stuff too. And at first when people would like, well, you do bookkeeping for my personal books, I would say no, because there's no like, you don't have to put in a P&L for your personal stuff. Like there's not going to be a return on investment for you, But when your personal books are that big, we're talking millions of dollars, they had no concept of where their money was going.
Yeah.
And so they were paying me for one, the peace of mind of knowing where their money is going, but two, so that then they can look at it, and like being in people's money is intimate. I see all of their habits. You know what I mean? So like, especially when people come with messy books.
Oh my God.
I see all their bad habits. They don't have to tell me their bad habits. I see it in their finances.
Yeah.
And money, I think, is so closely related to trauma. And when you haven't dealt with your childhood trauma, which doesn't have to be this big thing. It doesn't have to be like a rape or abuse. It can just be like the way that somebody used to speak to you.
Yeah.
Or it could, like it doesn't have to be these big things that people think of when they think of trauma. We put trauma on a scale and we're like, oh, it wasn't that traumatic. I had to, like you, I feel like when you go into your 30s, it's like therapy time. If you're in your 30s and you haven't gone to therapy yet, like you will, if you're healthy. if you want to be healthy, you will, like we've all done it. And I've done SOZOs and therapy. And there's so many things that I learned through that it's like, oh, I never would have considered that trauma. And I actually didn't even know it was a problem.
Yeah.
I didn't know it wasn't normal until somebody was like, that's a really unhealthy relationship that you have. And that's why you keep searching for love here and here, because this relationship wasn't healthy. And exactly what you said, like when you fix that, then business falls into place and personal relationships fall into place and everything just starts to
that's true.
go smoothly. because a healthy human can build healthy people, and a healthy human can build healthy business, and a healthy human has healthy financial status situation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it's like when you're healthy, it affects everything.
It does.
And if you want to be a business owner, I'm actually thinking of having one of my friends who's a therapist on this podcast, because you have to be a healthy human to have a healthy business.
No, you do, for sure. And then more importantly, to like within the business to have healthy operations, right? Because I've seen it all the time. I have a lot of friends that own businesses, and I've noticed, and it's crazy how you can pinpoint this out after you've done the work. They're like, oh, this person does this all the time. I have to let go of this person. You go into the office environment, it's toxic as hell. Everybody's gossiping and it's just craziness. And then I'm like, this is like a reflection of you. Like,
exactly.
you act like this. You act like this all the time.
Yes.
And so one of the things that I'm working on right now, actually, I saw my therapist yesterday. I go once a week. And we do like somatic therapy. So it's not talk therapy. I'm not just like talking about my problems.
Laying on your couch, how does that make you feel?
So this is like deep, like, so we do subconscious, like reprogramming, and there's just like deep work that happens, breath work and different things that like release a lot of the stuff that you may have built up. And one of the things that we were working on is like my personal vision statement, mission statement, values, because I'm so used to, from a business minded perspective, I'm like, we're not going to start the LLC yet. We don't have mission, vision, values. We don't have our brand story. Where did we come from? Who are we? What do we represent? And what do we do? And I'm like, we don't have any of that. Before we have that together, we're not going to come up with colors, not going to come up with a logo.
Amen.
Right?
Why do people think branding is first?
So I'm so used to doing that in business,
Yeah.
but I haven't done it with myself.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
And how are you supposed to know I can and cannot interact with this individual? I can or cannot work with this business. I can or cannot get into a relationship with this person because they don't represent my values. If you haven't done the work to write, what the hell are my values?
Yes.
Where have I come from? Who am I? What do I represent? And not talking about who am I from what do I do?
Right.
It's who am I like as a person? What values do I represent? Integrity, honor, honesty, not cutting corners, doing the right thing.
Yes.
You know? And so if you meet individuals, like I had met this accountant who clearly didn't have any of those, I was just like, oh, I'll get into bed with anybody. And now all of a sudden you realize a year later you're in a toxic relationship. You realize that you're with a business partner that is stealing money from the company. You realize you're doing all these different things, and they all could have been cut at the source if you had just been clear on who you are, who you represent, what your values are. And I think that that's really like the core. Now your business can flow because everything that you are doing and everybody you're interacting with are in congruence with that.
That is so good. I think so much like, you know, you and I both go to church, and in the church world, like, check your circle is kind of, you know, like one of the quotes that everybody talks about, like, check your circle. Who are your 5 people? You know, who's your inner circle? But people, I feel like, disconnect personal and business. They're like, oh, my business is over here and my personal friends are over here, and they can be 2 different circles. No. In terms of like, don't hire your friends, that some people, I'm personally fine with hiring friends, but some people are very like, don't work with friends, you know? But in terms of like, those people should be the same type of people, even if they're not exactly the same people, you know, like you can have your inner circle for business be different from your friendships, but they should still be exactly what you said. They should line up with your core values. They should line up with what you believe to be true about people and how a person lives their life.
No, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like for me, my mom always said, Katey, marry for character, marry for character. And she's like, you want to be with people of integrity. Everything else will line up if you find people of integrity. You know, it's the most important thing.
No, it's huge. Yeah. And I, like you said, it intersects personal, business, and everything else. You know, I think when it comes to the inner circle thing, when a couple years ago, everybody's heard the Les Brown thing, you know, you are the, you know, culmination of your closest friends, whatever. There's so many people that have similar sayings and beliefs. And I do believe that that's true. And what I used to do is, you know, before I got really like strong in who I am and what I represent, I used to go look for that in all the successful people. Cause I'm like, oh, if I find, you know, this guy on YouTube told me if I find 5 successful people, I'll be the 6th. So I'm going to go find the 5 most successful people I know. And next thing I know, I'm having thoughts about cutting corners, doing the wrong thing, getting in bed with the wrong people. and like doing things to get a dollar. Now my focus is money driven. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? I don't do this. This isn't who I am. But the 5 people that I surround myself with do this all the time. That's how they got to their success. And they're very successful. So now I got to try to wean these people off and figure out what's going on, still not addressing the core issue, which is, am I solid on who I am as an individual and what I represent? Because then you start radiating that. You won't even meet those people. You'll meet a successful person at church, or you'll meet a successful person at the gym instead of meeting them at a bar. And, not saying that a bar is bad, but,
right.
You understand it's really all about, it all comes back to you. Everything that happens to you is a reflection of the like energy that you're putting out, the energy that you're putting in to your endeavors. And it all comes full circle.
Yes, absolutely. And I believe life happens for you, not to you. Mm-hmm. So like everything that happens, it happens for you. It happens for your benefit. So even the bad things that happen, it's like God says he weighs nothing, right? It all works for you if you're being intentional about it. You can't play victim and think that life is going to happen for you.
Yeah.
But if you're intentional about it, and I think it's so hard, even coming to a place like Miami where, we met years ago.
Yeah.
And so when I first came to Miami, like you, I wanted to be kind of in the circle of the successful entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And I got in there and I was like, I don't want these people in my inner circle, And I remember my friends being like, Katey, you don't like anyone. Like, why are you so picky about who we hang out with? Why are you so this? Why are you so... And now it's like they're finally coming around to the fact that it's like, I'm picky about my inner circle. I'm very picky about my inner circle. I can be acquaintance friends with everyone. That's not a problem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But like inner circle, it has to come down to integrity, And like you said, money and integrity, some people are both, but a lot of people are not. And especially in a city like this, you really have to be careful. But I think there's hope too, because I think so many people, especially like I lived with a guy when I first moved to Miami, and he ended up leaving. And he was like, I don't like the people here. Like, he's like, I'm too gringo to be here. And I'm like, well, first of all, you have to embrace the Latin if you're going to live in Miami.
I know.
But secondly, like Miami has incredible people.
Yeah.
You just have to find them. You have to find your niche. And exactly what you said, like when you put out, you find what, you reflect and you find the people who are like you. So if you're not putting out that I'm a person of integrity, here I find a lot of people break their word, and I'm very much a my yes means yes person. If I say I'm in, I'm in. And if I can't, I'll tell you I can't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I'm not going to be like, yeah, I'll be there and not show up. That's like my biggest pet peeve. Like let your yes mean yes.
Well, that's huge. And like just as an example, yesterday was Epic Talks.
Yes.
And so I had seen Melissa at the gym the day before, and she's like, hey, you're coming, right? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to try my best. I'll let you know if I can't. And so yesterday I was dealing with so much with like all the craziness going on. I was like, there's no way I can go. So I texted her and I was like, hey, I told you I would try. I honestly can't. I've got some things going on. And I have a meeting tonight. And then she responded, hey, thank you so much. And I think that that's uncommon.
It's honorable.
You know what I mean? Is like, hey, I told you I would do something. Unfortunately, I can't do it. So I want to let you know ahead of time.
Yes.
And so, I'm not saying that that's like, it's not boastful in any means, because I went a long time without ever doing that. I would tell people stuff and never show up. Yeah. So that's a new transition that I've made, with my word. But yeah, I mean, there's just that. I think that when it comes down to it, there's so many things that you could speak on with regard to what we wish we knew. There's so many that we've already touched on. There's so many that we could touch on, right? But it really comes down for me to kind of circle back, like with your initial question, like self-love, acceptance, self-awareness, and really getting rooted on who you are, what you represent, and then finding a good CPA. For sure.
I love that. When it comes to like, because you're very successful, both in your personal life, and I think like somebody looking at you from afar being like, wow, he's done $1 billion in sales. Like that's huge. Most people will never see that kind of money in their lifetime, Is there kind of like one thing or something that you're like, this changed the game for me? Like this is what, in addition to what you've already said, I know that kind of all plays into it, but like to grow a company to the point where you're doing $1 billion in sales is like most people will never see numbers like that in their lifetime. You know, that's just like so unusual. Is there something that you're like, this is a turning point, or this is something you need to do, or maybe it's just like shifting your mindset, being around people who have made millions of dollars? I think that's one of the nice things about being in Miami is there's millionaires and even billionaires everywhere. And so it really opened your mind if you had never been here before, and then you come around here and there's like, I look out my window and there's yachts, like tons of yachts, and I live across the street from, I can see Mark Anthony's house from mine. Like you see Star Island right here, you know?
Yeah,
and
you have
so
a great
just
view.
Being able to just be around that all the time really opens you up to being like, oh, this is possible. This is normal life.
That's
People
true. It can also desensitize you.
Absolutely.
As well, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, to answer your question, there was, I mean, I could go on to a whole story. That camera just died. So I can go in a whole story about my turning point, because that was like rock bottom, did it for me. I would not be where I am today or have achieved even the slightest ounce of success that I have today if I had not hit rock bottom. That was the turning point for me. So I think if anybody's really going through like a rock bottom moment, they need to understand that like it sucks right now, but like this is a moment that you are going to appreciate so much, because it's the lessons that you're going to garner through this time period that are going to set you up for the rest of your life, right?
Absolutely.
Looking back. And it sucks going through that stuff. But you know, and I can go through like a whole story as to like exactly what happened. We could spend a whole podcast on that. But like at one point in time, high level synopsis, I tried to start a tech company with my buddy. We sunk every dollar we had into it. I took on a bunch of debt in order to make it happen. I just stopped doing mortgages completely, which at the time I was running a huge operation. I had 15 loan officers. We had a call center. We were like running and gunning, making money. I was living at the Icon, had my dream car that I'd always wanted. I put a poster on my wall like my whole life, and I got that car. And like I thought I was killing it, and I pursued this dream so intensely because I'm like an all or nothing type of person.
Yeah.
I like didn't pay attention to the business that was making me money, went all in on one that wasn't, and basically
That's a lesson in and of itself.
took a bet on black, lost everything. Wow. And so I ended up having to leave Miami. I moved home to Virginia. I was in my parents' house. I was going to file bankruptcy, and they wouldn't let me file bankruptcy because I had just technically moved to Virginia. And you have to live in the state for 6 months before you can qualify to file for bankruptcy. So I was like, well, I got 6 months. The debt load was costing me like $10K a month just in minimums, and it was still accruing interest. So I'm like, I got to get out of this, you know? And so I ended up getting a job at the same mortgage company that I had kind of walked away from here in Miami. They had an office in Maryland. And I went and I rented a $500 a month room. I busted my ass every day. I went to the gym in the morning, worked all day, went home. I watched motivational videos, sermon series, Mike Todd's Crazy Faith series got me through that time period, honestly, because, and within 8 months, I paid off all the debt.
And that in and of itself is miraculous.
And then, I flew to Tulsa, Oklahoma to hear Mike Todd's like final like season finale for Crazy Faith, because that was the series that like got me through that period of time.
Right.
I was just so determined to get back to Miami. And then I ended up moving back here. And then there were more tribulations, trials, like struggles that happened after that, right? But what stayed consistent was I had an incredible, incredible support team. And that would be my, like, I guess, second part answer to your question, which is like, what's gotten us to this like level of success? And that's support. Like, I have such a strong support team. There's no friggin' way I could do what I do without my team. There's no way. I'd be closing 2-3 deals a month, which is what most loan officers do.
And when you say support team, are you talking like your inner circle and your family, or are you talking like your employees and your team from that standpoint?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, they're one and the same, essentially. I mean, you know, my team, like I talk to first of all, from a referral standpoint, I talk to my realtors more than anybody else in my life, even my girlfriend, even my family. I talk to my realtors all day because we're always talking about deals. We're talking about business. You know, they're striving for success. They need to bounce ideas off of me. We have to see if this is a scenario that's going to work or not. So that's one thing, is I have one like wonderful, wonderful referral partners. But number two, I have a back office that supports, that allows me to 10x the production that I do. Yeah. I'm able to do so much more volume because I have someone that's doing basically all the tasks that I don't like doing or I'm not good at doing, right? Which is the way that we delegated it.
Yes.
And that's so important for scaling, is just like, if you hate doing something, you're not going to want to do it. You're not going to do it well.
You'll procrastinate.
Exactly. And then before you know it, you're in a mess. So yeah, I've got a great support system from a, I guess operational level in the business, but then also like my family has always been supportive. And they've, it was crazy. I had, when I was going through like my ups and downs, my dad always told me like, you have a degree, you've got licenses, you're a licensed financial advisor, which I was at the time. I am no longer. But he was like, why don't you just go to the bank? You could make $70,000-$80,000 a year. You could live comfortably. You have, you're going to have like a 401k, health insurance. You're going to have all these benefits and you're going to be living
baby boomer lifestyle.
Yeah. Why are you doing this? Why are you going against the grain? And I'm like, yo, I don't want that. Like,
I was born for something more.
and I'm like, Dad, I'll tell you why. I'm going through this struggle right now. But when I sit in the bank every day from 9 to 5, I literally want to like throw my head through the window.
I was going to say rip my hair out, but you don't have any.
I did at the time because I did do that role for a little bit when I got out of college. But yeah, I was just like, I don't want to do that. And I felt like my dad was always just like, why are you doing this? I took it as judgment. In reality, he was just concerned for me.
Right.
He just
safety.
wanted the best for me. He wanted safety, right? Like every good parent wants for their child.
Of course.
And what happened was I was like, nah, I'm not doing that. And I took the risk and I went down the rabbit hole and I had a lot of tears, a lot of heartache, a lot of craziness happen. And then last year, my dad and my mom and dad flew down for my birthday. And my dad was like in the room with me and he was all teary eyed and he got up and he saw like the amount of people that we had in the room and like where we were in this beautiful condo. And he was just like, I just want to say that like, I am so proud of my son because I always told him that he needed to do something a certain way. And he always went against I always thought he was crazy. He's taking these crazy risks. He was doing all these things that I didn't approve of. And though he did those, I never, ever in a million years believed that I could do it. And he ended up doing it and he's been successful at it. And he's like, I am so proud of him. And I was just like, yo, I can't believe I just heard my dad say that because this whole time I thought that he was like being critical. And in reality, he just wanted me to be safe. He wanted me to potentially go down the route that he went down because that's how he got success. That's how he got success, a retirement and a pension and things because he did things a certain way. And so he wanted that for me. I wanted something different for my life and I was able to achieve it. I pushed through the bullshit and, I'm still not where I want to be. I'm still on the way there, but we've gotten through a lot of storms. We've weathered a lot. And so to hear my dad say those words, like, I'm so proud of you for like sticking to your vision and pushing through. And that was just like incredible to hear. And I have a completely different relationship with my father now, mainly because of the work that I've done in like therapy and counseling and, the things that my dad told me that really impacted me in a negative manner throughout my whole life. I found out after having a conversation with him and doing this inner work, the reason he said those things is because those are things that his dad said to him.
Yes.
And so that's something that's going to stop here. I'm breaking a generational curse. He did it because his dad did it. His dad did it because his dad did it. And it's been coming through the pipeline for years, generations, and that's no longer going to happen. And so like my kid is going to be, and so like, these are all just lessons like that I never, ever, ever, ever would have uncovered if I had just gone the regular traditional route that everybody told me I should go down. Like it's being an entrepreneur, it's chasing that vision, chasing that with everything that you have that really like just uncovers all of this shit.
You're making me cry because it's so relatable,
Yeah.
I went through the exact same thing from a parent standpoint, like when I got my dream job at 23. My parents put me through college. They did everything to set me up for success.
Yeah.
I had 2 study abroads. I went to this amazing school. Like they sent me overseas when I wanted to study overseas. They paid for me to live in New York to do my internship because internships in New York in the fashion industry are unpaid.
Yeah.
They literally did everything that I wanted for me to get this dream job that I got at 23. And then at 24, 25, I said, I quit. And they're like, what do you mean you quit? We just invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in setting you up so that you could do this, And I was like, I'm burnt out. I'm tired. I just went through a bunch of trauma, and I hadn't dealt with yet. So it was still very much like on my heart, trying to ignore it, but it was still there, and that's when I was doing Adderall. I was doing a bunch of drugs. And I said, I'm quitting my life and moving to South Korea. And my parents were like, you're what? You're joking, right? And they were so against it, of course. And I was making more money than any of my friends. I literally like had my dream job at 23. I was the youngest buyer in the company at JCPenney.
Wow.
And I was an assistant buyer, but even assistant buyer I was managing 3.5 million.
Wow.
That was really unusual,
Yeah.
you know? And I was just like, they were like, no, you're not. And I said, yes, I am. And I quit my job and I moved to South Korea and I lived in Asia for almost 2 years.
Wow.
And I came back and they were like, now what are you going to do? You're going to go back into your corporate job, right? Like you're going to go back into real life. Like you got it out of your system. And I was like, no, actually. So I came back because I was really sick. I had like a life-threatening case of dengue fever when I lived in Vietnam. And so I only moved back because I was in the hospital there for 3 weeks. And
oh my gosh.
It was like I almost lost my life. And my parents were like, will you please come home and just like deal with this at home? And so it took me 3 weeks till I was like out of the hospital enough that my body was strong enough to make the trip back to the States.
Yeah.
And I came home and recovered for about 6 months. And then as soon as I was strong again, I went back to Asia. And then I backpacked Asia. And then I moved to Europe. And I was backpacking Europe for months. And my parents are like,
what is wrong with this girl?
Literally. They were like, we did everything right.
Yeah. She's so rebellious.
Yeah. And I was just, I mean, I was having the time of my life, but like I had started my company because my mom, when I came back from having dengue and having Asia, I couldn't go back into corporate because I was too sick still. And my mom had said, I'll train you in accounting if you get a certification and I'll give you next person that she was like at capacity. They weren't taking on new clients at this point. And she's like, so the next person that wants to hire me, I'm going to give them to you, but you're in my house because I was sick. I was recovering. Yeah. I didn't have an apartment here. My apartment was in Korea. And so I was staying at my parents' house while I was like figuring out my life, you know? And she said, I'll give you a client and I'll train you so that the work will never go to the client until it's gone through me. So we don't have to worry about that, you know? And so I did that for 6 months. So by the time I went back to Asia, I already had like 3 or 4 clients.
Wow.
And so it was going to be just like a temp thing. Like millennial accounting literally just kind of happened. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to start a business, you know? But then I just kept it running and it's just been growing and growing and growing. And then, like you said, I started doing, when I went to BSSM this year for ministry school and then started doing SOZOs and therapy and all this stuff. And I learned, I even went to a health retreat with one of my friends. He's like, Katey, you need to go to this like inner healing retreat, which I'm like, inner healing retreat sounds kind of woo woo. I'm not into it, but it was actually the best thing I've ever done. It was a Christian one. And, the whole thing was about generational curses.
Yeah.
And I started crying when you were talking because my mom called me when I was in Georgia at this retreat and she was like, what are you doing? And I said, what do you mean? And she said, your dad is literally like waking up a different person. And she said, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, I'm praying to clean my generational lines. I'm praying to like release these things that we've dealt with our whole lives in our home. And I'm praying for God to redeem them. And literally my dad was like changing overnight. And it was just like, I had no idea. They taught us about how your parents are just hurt children that have grown up. You know, nobody taught them that this was trauma. Nobody taught them that they shouldn't have been treated that way. So they're just repeating what they know, having no idea the effect of their actions on you. And so I was crying because the last like 2 years have just been like really hard. But now that we're past that, my dad and I have this amazing, beautiful relationship that we've never had my whole life, you know, because I worked through and am able to see him differently and he's seeing me now differently. And it's just like so beautiful that now we get to have this amazing relationship. And he's like, I'm so proud of you. And they were so against my lifestyle, you know? So that's why I was like crying during your story because it's so relatable. I think so many baby boomers, they did what they needed to do for that time of what was happening in the world, you know, but our generations are different and we want to do our own thing and we don't want to be chained to a desk. And so it's like, you kind of need that support from other entrepreneurs and other people who are doing what you're doing until you're successful and then your family's on board. But there's like those few years where you're just like hustling and nobody gets you. Yeah. You know, I think it's easier for like Gen Z where like the hustle is normal. Yeah. The like not having a job is normal, you know, but for the millennials who still have baby boomer parents.
Yeah. We're trying to like break a mindset that was instilled on us from the past that's no longer relevant in today's world. Like the idea of, I'm going to go work for a place for a long time, get a pension and retire. My dad is so set. He couldn't be more set. My dad's making more in retirement now than he was when he was working.
Wow.
Because of his pensions. And this was the lifestyle, back in the days, you were always looking for that pension. You couldn't wait to retire. And that's just not the case anymore. I don't even know any company that offers pensions. Yeah.
So where do you even find a pension?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing that story. Yeah, I think that that's so important because the whole premise, at least from what I've gathered, for the reason why you're doing this is to impact people and let them know there are things out there that you don't know.
Right.
And rather than going through it a difficult time and learning it the hard way like we did, you could learn from our mistakes and the mistakes of others. And I think that sharing that message is very, very important. And yeah, I think that if there's one thing I could leave people with that would be more important than all the rest of it, because obviously, hiring a good accountant's great, CPA is great, getting into business with the right people is great, working on yourself is great. More important than all of that is really self-awareness and uncovering who you are. Again, going back to this, I know I said it 3 times now, but understanding who you are, as a person. When you ask somebody who you are, most people's response is, oh, well, I'm a banker, I'm a this, or I'm a that, and they go to their occupation. But your occupation is what you do. It's not who you are.
Exactly.
Who are you and what do you represent?
You're not a human doer, you're a human being.
Yeah. And so when you uncover that, and it's if you're going to uncover some shit that you don't want to see. Yes. You're going to be well, I am... Messy. Not only am I a person who, values X, Y, Z, but I'm a person that's also made some really poor choices. Well, why did I make those choices? Now we're going to uncover the rabbit hole as to why that's happened. Maybe it was because of stuff that was instilled on us from our parents. Maybe it was generational curses. Maybe it was because we wanted, we didn't feel that self-love, so we wanted to get it from somewhere else. And now we're doing things to try to seek the attention of others, posting things on Instagram we shouldn't, looking for that in all the wrong places. And so we have to also be okay with uncovering the uncomfortable. Yes. And then getting to the root of those problems, because as you heal, and this isn't just a one-time thing, this is a lifetime journey. It never ends. But as you take that, that responsibility for the things you've done, do the hard work and push through it, everything around you changes. Your business takes off. You get into business with the right people. You're doing things like this. And it all comes back to your purpose. Yes.
All the yes.
Yeah. So
I was about to ask you what's your one thing. So I'm glad that you answered that. You just read my mind. That's so perfect.
Yeah.
And we'll have to have you back on the show to talk about, mortgages or.
Look, mortgages is what I do. I'm very good at it.
Yes.
But it's not who I am.
Yes.
And I think, one thing that I really, like I said, I want to tell people more about and empower them to achieve is being themselves, putting that out there, letting people know who they are, and the business comes. I don't have to sell myself.
Right.
I close loans and I'm pretty damn good at it.
Yeah.
And I have a great support team and we do some incredible business around the city. But that's not who we are.
Right.
We're made up of a family that supports each other. We pump each other up every morning. If someone's down, the other lifts the other up. Mm-hmm. And we do the good work that we do because we're good people.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that.
Thank you.
Well, why don't you tell people where can they find you if they want to learn more about you, about your podcast, if they need a mortgage, or if they just want to be I love this person. How do I follow them?
Thank you. Yeah. So I can be reached on Instagram at Drew's the Move. So
Drew's the Move.
So yeah, I can be reached at Drew's the Move on Instagram. I have a podcast that will soon be released. I'm not ready to disclose the name and everything. It'll come out in January. But if you're following me on Instagram, you'll find out all about it there.
Once he launches it, we'll share it on our page so you all can find it.
And the link in my bio will have everything else.
Perfect. Well, thanks for being with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This was wonderful. I enjoyed the conversation. This is so good.
I love when we can talk business, but also talk all the other stuff too.
The other stuff is
not siloed.
80%
that's
of it.
Yeah, that's way more important actually than the actual business.
Yeah.
So it's been so fun having you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thank you.
You'll have to come back. And that's a wrap for today. And remember, today's a great day to start a business. Bye.